I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:31. Item 2, Presentation A, Internal Audit Department Quarterly Board Update. Ms. Shoesmith.
Good evening. Good evening, President Cronin.
Good evening.
Trustees, Dr. Micah, and 2 awesome guests. Thank you so much for being here. Tonight I'm here to present my quarterly update of our audit work that my team and I have completed since my last update, which occurred September 19th. Because there were no meetings held in December and January, and a pretty full agenda in January, I was asked to postpone until today. So just so you know why I'm here now. Ahead of time, I provided you a list of the audits that are up for discussion this evening. I put them in chronological order this time, and just on the right-hand side of the page, corresponding to each audit, I've designated if I feel like particular questions may lead us into closed session to talk about those. Possibly I can answer questions out here, and we'll play it by ear on that. And each of you received the reports. That's kind of the new standard for our department, is to send those out as they're issued. So they would have been peppering into your email from September through now. So hopefully you've had a chance to review those. And I'll leave it up to you if you would like me to provide some type of summary, if some are older in your memory than others, or we could just go straight to questions, whatever y'all feel is most appropriate.
Would you like her to do an overview of them, or do you want to just ask questions of different audits? I will tell you that, did you send us the audits for the unannounced cash count and safe inventories?
There is not a report for those, yes. So
Okay.
those, yeah, so the...
And the annual occupational employment and wage rate?
Correct, and then the fraud hotline, yeah,
Okay.
thank you for that.
No, that's okay. Those, I knew there wouldn't be one for fraud, but the other two, I was like, have I lost
Right,
something?
I put them on there because it is kind of a consultative thing that we do for the district. So if you want to know about that, but there is no report that goes along with it.
So maybe what we could do is go chronologically through here. If anyone had questions about Wood or the P-card or Tuscany Heights, because I do think you'll need to talk about the unannounced cash count one that we don't have a report for, and then the occupational employment one.
Sure.
So do y'all think that, would y'all like to just go chronologically through this?
I didn't either.
Okay. So Wood Middle School, did anybody have any questions about that audit?
I just had one question, Madam President. So there was about a 70% noncompliance with the stuff. Obviously, this was a year in review, so what is the follow-up? Obviously, the administration gets the recommendation to do that, and the bookkeepers and all that, but is there a follow-up from internal audit, or is there a way we go back and double-check to make sure that they're obviously getting,
Totally.
Yeah, tightening that down? Obviously, there will always probably be a few errors, but that was pretty high.
I failed to fully answer your question. There's a portion that's really important to it. I wouldn't be able to say out here, but I'll say this. Yes, I have a plan to have kind of a asterisk in our plan for next year to do a follow-up. On top of that, our budget and finance department, those are the folks that really, really work directly with the bookkeepers day in and day out. They are working directly with the campus. They, right after, in September at this time frame, I haven't talked to them in the last little bit, but I can provide more if you'd like it. But yes,
so there's an ongoing process, obviously, day to day, and then y'all will at some point take a spot check, maybe. Okay. No, that was just a general question. Just because thank you.
Yeah, totally.
I have a couple of questions, but I think they'll have to be in the back.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything on Wood? Okay, on the purchasing card, are there questions? Does anyone have questions about that?
I actually do. I have a question about that one, but it's actually, it sounds like, I think it applies to all of them. It's a very general question. But
Okay.
One of the issues that came up about the DocuWare scanning, and that seems to be prevalent through several of the reports we received,
Yes,
is that something on a broader scale that's getting reviewed and looked at. I know in that specific report, it talks about making sure people are trained and
Right.
know to use it and that kind of thing, but it
Right.
seems like that is a larger issue than just this one or these few audit reports.
You are correct. You'll see it repetitively throughout campus audits, departmental audits. All of our campuses and departments utilize DocuWare in a lot of ways, and it's just not the expert on it. Somebody else would probably describe it much more eloquently than I will, but they scan in all of their documents. Human resources, variety of departments utilize it, and it's just a safe storage
Right.
for all of our documents, and therefore we can retrieve them. And it has been a struggle to ensure that everybody consistently scans all of their documents in on a timely basis. I'll put
Right.
it on that.
Right.
And it has been the recommendation of internal audit in the past, in a number of different audits, to develop a policy that states that it is mandatory. There is currently no policy that states that it is mandatory to scan into DocuWare. The only mandatory statement is that documents, be it financial or whatever it may be, are maintained for the appropriate amount of time. That can be in a desk, in a file, or on DocuWare. That has been a consistent recommendation that we have made. As of yet, from my knowledge, there has not been a policy in place. I don't know if that's something that's in the works, but
Well, and I know that you're limited on being able to just recommend what
Sure.
the policies are to say, hey, everybody needs to follow these things. And so
Yeah.
it sounds like that's more of a system type thing. This one just seemed to have, especially with the large amount of
Right.
purchases that this program would go through, that would be, and it sounds like everything was generally found or
right. It's just those
acquired.
extra steps that you take to,
Yeah.
right, exactly. It happens, we see a good volume of errors within this purchasing program audit. Everything, all the documentation, along with P-card transactions, credit card transactions, it's very paper heavy, more so than maybe some other things. And so we are very dependent on them scanning everything in. And just for the sheer volume, there were over 35,000 transactions last year, $11 million. I mean, you're exactly right. It's a huge volume. But the sampling that we do is such that with a very close, high degree of certainty, we can say that of these 290, this 34%, most likely within a 95% variance, there's 34% missing of all, or not missing, but not scanned out there.
Not
Yeah.
scanned, yeah.
So continue to make that recommendation that a policy should be put in place to make sure that that is mandatory in a particular time frame, something reasonable, that it needs to be always scanned and maintained. So
No, I get it. In my own job, I have to scan receipts and
Yeah.
attach them to expense reports, and it's always the one thing that
it's
you're like,
tedious
"Ugh,
for
I
sure,
don't
and
wanna have to
depending
do
on the
this,"
time
but,
of year. Yeah, exactly.
I think as long as we're making sure that it'd be nice to see if what comes of whatever policies
Sure.
that might help out. So,
Most definitely.
yeah. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Tuscany Heights, did anybody have any questions about that one?
It was very simple, I think.
Yeah.
Typically, our elementary school campus audits are pretty minimal. They have minimal transactions, so it was a good result.
Okay. So how about the unannounced cash count and safe inventories?
Sure.
Do you want to talk to us about that?
I can, and I think it's easy for me to talk about out here. I don't need to. I took the turn this time and went out and did my surprise visits. I did one elementary school, one middle school. Perform a cash count. That means essentially, count everything, any money that is in their safe, open, that is available for anybody to get to. If it's sealed in a bag, for example, or a cafeteria, every day they package up the cafeteria money and they bring it to the safe to be picked up to take to the bank. If it's in a sealed bag, I don't open it up and count it. I leave it sealed. But if anything is in, a bank zipper bag that can be opened, that the bookkeeper or anyone else who has access to that safe could on their own come and take from that bag, account it and account for everything. As well as just an inventory of the safe. There's some standard things that are in a campus safe. All of their P cards, for example, they store those in there for safekeeping. Sometimes there's a random lost and found ring, or it's a hodgepodge of things. It is a place for safekeeping. So inventory that. One thing we're looking for is to ensure that there is no petty cash sitting in their safe. That is not allowed. Years ago it was, but I'd say I might be off, but about 6-ish years ago, we disallowed or the district disallowed any type of petty cash to be held. And then I do an internal control questionnaire with the bookkeeper. Just run through a number of questions about their daily work, their training, what they're seeing, their timeliness, a variety of things. Both of these bookkeepers are wonderful. They were very tenured. One was new to us, but a very tenured bookkeeper in her past life somewhere else. And another that's been here, I think it was 20-something years, and this is the third school, and they're always a wealth of knowledge. So they actually asked for some training from Audit, which always makes me happy. At our bookkeeper meetings, I am going to be revamping some training that I did in the past to go out and get in front of them and do that as well. I had they all had appropriate items. I went to them the first day back from Thanksgiving break. So their safe should be empty. Everything should have gone to the bank. That's why we pick targeted times, Everything should have gone to the bank the Friday before Thanksgiving, and the safe should be sitting there empty of any money that anybody could get to, essentially, And both were completely, had nothing that spanned over the break, which was very nice. There were, I don't have a note on my notes how many, but there was a deposit that had been delivered that morning. That's okay, they're open for business. So I could tell by the dates on the transactions. But nothing from before the break, very pleased. And everything was appropriate that was in there. So yeah, they were both good. Our next ones may or may not be coming up at a different break coming up soon, so we'll see.
So do you normally do 2 at a time, or what?
I do 2 in the morning. It'll take to go from one and then to the next and do the questionnaire. It takes about half a morning, I'm done by lunch or whatever, and then get back to the office. So that was me this time. I have been a little bit shorthanded. One of my auditors has been out on leave. Today was her first day back. So it was myself and one other person, so I just went and did it on my own. The coming ones, now that we're back to our full staff, I'll send out 2 of them to do, to hit a little more, but this one was just me flying solo this time, so.
Okay, and I'm sorry if you said this, but are they done quarterly?
I do it around particular breaks at targeted times where I would expect their safe to look a certain way.
Okay.
Either empty or full of a bunch of stuff that needs to be picked, depends.
Okay.
With the goal of ensuring that they're following those procedures.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody have any questions about this? Okay. Reagan High School. Did anybody have any questions about that audit?
I did have another, this one caught my eye for a different reason. Again, another general comment or question. But like in this report, we talk about minimal issues or occurrences. What is a threshold? What thresholds do we use for when you use the word minimal versus, I don't know if you have, I didn't catch other words in there, but that one for some reason stood out to me. Is there less than 25% is considered minimal, or?
And may I ask for clarification? Are you meaning just at the beginning of the report?
In the summary
Gotcha.
It says, and I don't have it in front of me, but
yes,
in the summary
I
it says, it's like in the first sentence of the summary. It talks
just
about
like a
there
basic
being
descriptive. Yeah, minimal occurrences with
minimal
non-compliance.
occurrences. And that's not in every one, obviously, because some areas have more issues than others.
Sure, no, I understand.
But what is, it seems like could be a subjective word.
Understand, yeah.
Put into a
I'd say
objective audit.
In this circumstance, and I'd say I think the best way to describe it.
Because there was another one that said minimal. I can't remember if it was Tuscany Heights or there was another one that said minimal as well.
There is not a set percentage, for example, like you said, like 25% or whatever for certain things. I would say our high schools have huge volume
Sure.
compared to middle and elementary school. So when we're looking at a high school audit, just for the sheer volume, they have, approximately 4,000 transactions a year compared to an elementary that might have 100.
Right.
And so the probability of error is just sheer numbers, that they could have more errors just due to the volume of their transactions. And the type of transactions at a high school, they do a ton of fundraising, for example, that our elementary schools really don't do.
Sure.
So the type of funds coming through are a little different. So with coupling those two things together, we tend to use the word minimal, and I appreciate the feedback because it is somewhat subjective. I could put in the future, I could put some type of, figure to it. Comparatively to other high school,
And maybe that's what,
maybe that's a better way.
maybe that's
or
what
find
it
a
is.
way.
And again, this is very
Yeah,
nitpicky,
totally.
but I think going
So that it'll mean
forward,
something for you as the audience. Yeah.
it might be nice to know if we are going to use words like that,
Sure.
is there a threshold that
Yeah.
exceeds or doesn't exceed, or just say we reviewed it and there are 2 occurrences.
Yeah, and just leave it at
And just
leave it at that.
And
Yes,
I know
sir.
again but you don't want to get into saying minimal versus severe
True.
versus moderate or whatever, because I think that could lead in the summary to either make you gloss over things or really
Sure.
look at something. And so
Yeah, most definitely.
I want to make sure that we're not either underdoing it or overdoing it. So
May
we
I
just state
ask
factually.
a follow-up question that goes along with that? Maybe just, because you are my audience for my reports and my bosses. A lot of my peers out there in the state, and just in audit in general, sometimes have not a score, kind of a scoring, a ranking of audit reports, and I think of it similar to our, like the ABCDE or ABCDF kind of variance. And I don't know, historically, we have not had any type of scoring mechanism within our audit reports.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes in line with that a little bit. It could. I don't know if that's something that, you would find value in. If I could research and, find a way to do that, to give you, whatever the score may be. If they got a 5, that means they're had it, the top 10% best errors, or whatever it may work out to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'd be valuable.
I don't know. Personally, I don't know if that necessarily is anything that would help
Sure.
me, because I think the reports are very, we go through it, read the summary, and
Sure.
I think you outline the issues, and all the data is there.
Okay.
And I would hate either for one of us or future board members to go, oh, a 5, okay, well, I'll focus on the 10, or I'll focus on the 1.
And that's exactly why a lot
And
of
so
times it doesn't
I think
happen.
I prefer to just have the info.
Okay.
I think it's just with some of those subjective words, if we don't have something that ties to it, I don't know.
Most definitely. I
Yeah,
appreciate the
seems
feedback.
like something we could look
I
into.
would agree, and that sounds like it'd make extra work for you and your staff. I
Yeah.
just
Correct.
I think it's very specific, just so we know, and this, and maybe like a running average of the average high school campus has a 10% error rate on.
Maybe I
that or
could just
whatever.
provide that periodically.
Just so
yeah.
we have maybe some relative, so we can see if they're
Yeah.
trending above or below,
Sure.
or doing a little bit better or worse than the average.
Sure.
Maybe, but something that's very readily attainable, not creating more work for you necessarily, but gives us just very specific. I mean, otherwise these are very clear because you're giving us exact numbers.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, no, they're,
I think those that do utilize that type of scoring, there's a variety of reasons why. I won't get into it, but essentially they audit all of their campuses every year.
every year.
We don't have the ability to do that, and I can discuss it later if it's just the volume is such that we couldn't. So that would be very helpful in those times, I think, where you see every year, where you see them all and you can compare them all. But this would be kind of looking apples to oranges. You wouldn't have something to compare to for a few years. So, yeah, maybe I could just do an annual, add that in as somehow as a report, just to give you something to judge it against. So, yeah, thank you.
That was it. Sorry to derail
No,
that
that's
one.
fine.
That's okay. Well, I
I
mean,
appreciate the feedback.
it brings up a good point, because, when it says, but the review identified minimal occurrences, you're thinking, okay, not very much. But then when you know, the sponsor didn't deliver the bookkeeper and it was 18%. Is 18% minimal? I don't know. I mean,
Sure.
in my subjective opinion, maybe not.
Sure.
But in somebody else, you know, so I think to your point, maybe you just don't put that verbiage in there about identified minimal occurrences because you are stating what all the occurrences.
Right, because one occurrence could be a big one occurrence versus
True.
you could have 14 small ones that are real minor. So
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, true.
So maybe it's just taking that verbiage out of there. Anybody have anything else on this? I had some questions, but I think it's going to need
Yeah, I
to be
have
in
a
the back.
feeling.
Well, I had a, excuse me, a question, maybe it's in general. I don't have the standard criteria in front of me, but when you find areas of non-compliance, and maybe this is not the area, correct me,
Sure, sure.
is there training or retraining that's required, or, you know, what's the next step of compliance?
I'd say it depends on what the error, what the finding is, what area it is in. In our recommendations, typically you'll see a recommendation for some type of training in that area. If always is the case, you know, it kind of runs the gamut. And then those departments are tasked with, you know, doing that additional training, holding those refreshers, for example. You know, let's say it's scanning. That's just because we mentioned that earlier. The procurement department holds periodic scanning training classes that people can, brand new to the district, or a refresher course. There's monthly meetings. It just runs the gamut as far as the variety of different ways that people can learn and refresh on those skills. So that's what we recommend. And the reports always are sent to the auditee's supervisors, essentially, to then take it and manage their folks and to help them with it, what those needs may be. There are times, like we mentioned, and we can talk further about Wood Middle School, for example, the question where there are certain things that when we can follow up and go back in to ensure that that learning has occurred. And I'm happy to train to the, you know, I feel like my job as an educator as well. If I can train everybody and work myself out of the job, that's my ultimate goal. Everybody knows what they're doing and is smooth sailing, you know. So I try to do that along the way as well. But yes, there's a multitude of departments that are constantly refreshing and training. I don't know of anything per se apart from my recommendation that is a mandatory. You must do this if this is a finding in an audit.
So there is some standardized, I would say, training modules, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
That says, okay, if, and I'm not going to use the word finding, but just
Right.
if someone is in non-compliance. So for
Right.
instance, at UTSA, if someone misuses the credit card
Uh-huh.
or whatever, the supervisor is notified, and then that person has to take a certain training,
Sure.
has to present a certificate,
Okay.
and it's noted that they
Mhm.
took the training, and you know, and if that happens again, then
Right.
the credit card gets suspended.
Right.
So there's different levels like that.
From our perspective, I don't have the authority to mandate that they attend and then can follow up and document that. I can recommend that, and the manager can then move forward that recommendation if they so choose, or document how they do. Some, everybody manages a little differently. Some are, they reply back and provide me documentation. Others, maybe it takes longer. Kind of runs the gamut. But yes, we have all those types of training. There's initial trainings. There's lots of refresher trainings. Eduphoria is a big housing source of all of how we register for all these different types of trainings. There's tons still online, in person. They happen all the time. So, and then I know our budget and finance department, our procurement department, obviously I work hand in hand with them all the time. They go out and one-on-one train constantly. So That's something that if it's just, there isn't a training coming up, I know that the ladies and gentlemen in both of those departments, they go out and go directly if, if asked, so.
But it's voluntary.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Doyle, you maybe are onto something. Either we could talk about it as a board policy, saying you will standard part of, if it's a recommendation, we make that required training, or maybe it's an admin reg through Dr. Micah, depending if what we think might be appropriate for the staff, if they need, just to ensure they get the additional training they need, but it's documented, just so we can prevent further occurrences maybe, but that may be for another day.
Okay, anything else about Reagan? Hill, does anybody have any questions about Hill? All right, the occupational employment and wage rate estimate, you want to talk about that a
I
minute?
put this here because this is an advisory service that we provide to our construction management department. So last meeting 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, Mr. Flores put through the, I think it was a consent item for that. And just I inherited doing this work as my predecessors have, and it's something that, from my understanding, it makes sense that we utilize the information that comes out from the U.S. Department of Labor with the updated wage rates for the coming year. It's super interesting. It takes a day. I run out there, go on the website, pull the data once it's released, and upload that into a worksheet for construction management. It provides them the ability, construction management, the ability to say that they did not mess with the numbers at all. Our audit department provided this. It gives them that extra sense of security that their numbers are on the up and up, and an extra pair of eyes on that. That's, I think, why we have done it, and it's easy for us to do. It's interesting. It gives you a good quick glimpse into the economy, and it's an interesting thing. But I just wanted you to know that that's something, while it doesn't take very long, it is something that I worked on for construction management. So,
Any questions on that? Okay, Johnson High School Band. Questions on that? The fraud hotline monitoring, do you want to do that out here, or do you think it's?
I can just say that we've had, since we've last met, we've had 5 complaints that have come in over our fraud hotline, and they were actionable, something that we could look at in a variety of ways. I'm happy to, describe more, as they all were anonymous. Nobody, I take that back. One of the 5 were not, but I'm happy to answer any questions as we can. But yeah, we're getting to a consistent amount, which I think historically, before the Northeast tip line was enacted, we received a lot of complaints on our fraud hotline that maybe we weren't really the home for, and we would send them out where they needed to go, of course. So our numbers have dropped to a more actionable amount that really belong with us, and the rest are going to the other appropriate departments. So yeah, I think it's pretty steady and standard, and nothing scary. Everything was okay.
Could you explain a little bit more about the fraud hotline? Is that where folks are calling the hotline saying that a department or someone has committed fraud? Or?
Possibly. Mm-hmm. There's a anonymous voicemail, as well as that's what it was last meeting. I believe you weren't here with us, so yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. There's an anonymous voicemail line. It's a answering machine, and that doesn't have caller ID. It's just they can call a line that is directly this fraud hotline. It's posted on the website. As well, there is a Google form, an online form where they can click. If they don't want to call, they can fill out a form. Both of those come in to my office. I check the voicemail. It's under lock and key. We're the only ones that have access to it. And we just log those, check it every day. We have a 10-day time frame, from 10 business day time frame to work on those things and at least respond and start work on them. It's never gone more than a day or two. I mean, they're easy to jump right on. So they can leave a voicemail or send in the email, and it just comes in verbatim, whatever they type, whatever their complaint. And it runs the gamut. I'd be happy to give you some examples, some real-life examples, but just any type of fraud, theft, or abuse is kind of the broad time ideas of things that we're looking for. So theft on a campus, theft of time. People could put so-and-so is cheating on their time card. That's waste, using, so-and-so is taking reams of boxes of paper home, or, using equipment not as they should. True
So
theft.
we're including that under the category of fraud.
Fraud,
Is that right?
theft, and abuse, and that terminology, fraud, theft, and abuse, it's kind of a lump term that audit teams utilize for that work. And yes, ma'am, the title of the hotline is typically a fraud hotline for people to call in fraud. Possibly it could be, remarketed. I'm not sure, but yeah,
Okay,
sure.
thank you.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the audit work in progress
Sure.
and the future planning, and then we'll adjourn into closed
Sure,
session?
most definitely. So first on the list there, you see our annual CRMS. That's our Controlled Resource Management System. That's what that stands for. This is all of our inventory throughout the entire district. Every piece of inventory that is worth more than $500, it has a tag. Like, for example, this monitor has a little tag right here. There's a huge system, a database with all of our stuff that we go out and do a random sampling of that and physically identify all those items throughout the entire district. It's the largest audit that we do as far as the scope, because literally we're looking at every building, everything from computers to pianos to mowers. It's amazing the things that we go look for. And then while we're there, we also look at do a reverse sampling where we take a look while I'm there. I'm going to find something else random, and then I'm going to go back and make sure that it's on the list. So we kind of cross-reference so we can look at double the information at the same time. Excuse me. Normally, a couple of auditors tackle this because everybody's out and about doing things. Like I mentioned, we've been a little short, so one auditor has been working on it along with my audit technician helping out. And she's at the very end of finishing up the departmental work. I foresee a report here in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say. She's getting closer to that. Next on the list is not an audit per se, but it is something that happens every 5 years. We are tasked with spearheading the bid process and review and interview and selection of our external auditors. And that process is happening currently right now. So the bid actually just was finalized or opened this morning, and so we're going through that bid evaluation process. There's a committee that is built to do that and review. We'll interview them, and then I will come to you with a recommendation for selection for that. So it just takes a little time. It's an extra project that we have every 5 years. And then annual, the employee conflict of interest review. I'm building that and pre-positioning that currently right now. Everything is set and ready to go to issue that survey. Last time we spoke, I provided an update on that, and we talked about the response rate. I've done a lot to improve on that response rate of our employees. I'll talk about that next time once it's complete and let you know, but feel very confident. I've uncovered every rock that I can to be able to make sure that folks know about the upcoming survey. So that's coming soon. And then I can actually say on the future planning, my auditor just returned, and she is chomping at the bit this morning. She's already starting on Driscoll Middle School. I wasn't sure how she'd be first day back, but she was ready to go. So she's starting on that. That's our last campus audit of the year. Very happy to say that we'll be able to complete all of the campus audits that we committed to doing. That's such an important thing. We have so many campuses, so I know that we'll be able to complete that. And then I have already started the planning stages it just was too late for me to update your paper to shuffle it up. But I'm beginning work on that operational audit you see there for security cameras at our district facilities. I'm in the preparation and planning stages for that. So that'll be carried out through June. It'll take me a little bit. Continued cash counts throughout the rest of the year as campuses are open. So we have a couple other times that we'll get out there and do that. Warehouse inventory and observations. This is our all of our warehouses, our general warehouse, our food service. This is work that we do on behalf of our external auditors, or for them, not but. We go out and, just like we are other inventory, we do a sampling of inventory at all of our different warehouses, and then we provide that to the external auditors for their work. So that always happens in the summer. All of our warehouses wait for schools to be out, mostly trickle down, and they have some times where they stand still, they can print a report, and we know that no orders are coming in, no orders are coming out, and we go and do an inventory of those warehouses to assure that their numbers are correct. And then in June, last thing we do, the summer is heavy on our work that we do for the external auditors. We provide those confirmation letters to all of our banking institutions as well. Y'all will receive that standard kind of conflict of interest letter that they send out to you as well. That's the time frame for that. So we build those. It doesn't take too much, but that's an additional step that we do for them. So that's coming in the summer as well. And that'll be the end of the fiscal year. So
Okay. All right. So now, item 3, executive session. We're going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074 for personnel, and the time is 6:07. The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 6:42. Next item 5, adjournment, and the time is 6:43.